Hi everyone. Today I thought I'd talk about the new Skrillex record called SOMA. I'm gonna be honest, this album completely flew under the radar for me. Literally didn't hear about its rollout, didn't hear about its existence until like yesterday. It came up on my like recommended albums on Tidal, and I thought that's weird. Must be an EP or something. But no, it was a fully fledged album that Skrillex has dropped very recently. So yeah, I found that a bit unusual, but I listened to it and here's what I think. Now, I think it's fair to say that Skrillex's production style has changed drastically throughout the course of his career. Perhaps quite starkly, and I think his 2015 album with Diplo marks this sudden diversion away from his conventional bro step style. However, like most people, I still withstand that his greatest bangers come from his early era. Tracks like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, Equinox, Summit, Rock and Roll, just so many timeless classics, and I don't think he's even put anything out in the past maybe 10 years that I would consider a classic. Now, unfortunately, I went into this new album with low expectations, given that his album track record isn't the best. None of his albums have exactly been met with overwhelmingly positive feedback. But nonetheless, I found things to enjoy on Sony's latest effort, which is unsurprising retrospectively, given the amount of different styles he explored on the record: bass, house, future garage, techno, UK bass. But honestly, I often find that the average Skrillex song nowadays is difficult to place a genre onto. I've seen people use the term Skrill step to describe a lot of his stuff. I suppose I'll start by talking about the bad stuff. My least favourite track was easily the last track, Diwali. Incredibly annoying and repetitive vocals and just a very lacklustre song. Maybe the lasting impact wouldn't have been as bad had it been placed in the centre of the record, but having it as the ending is a questionable decision. Even the bass, the only interesting element of this song, sounded cheap and underproduced. I mean, even for Skrillex's current standards, which aren't terrible to be fair, this is a terrible song. I'd probably place it in the 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 category. Not a good ending. It left quite a sour taste, admittedly. My second least favourite was Scut 2, and this one actually gets a bit more remorse from me than the previous one, because I can kind of see the appeal. Credit where credit's due, it's a unique song. It's actually produced incredibly well, and it flows nicely as a song, but the main synth, if you can even call it a synth, that Skrillex used for this song, or maybe the collaborator, it was their idea, I don't know. It's just incredibly grating and completely ruins the song for me. It just sounds way too just squelchy and weird and atonal. I'm not a fan of it at all. There's other songs that I didn't really enjoy, but I don't want this review to be a completely negative affair, so we'll move on to some better stuff. My favourite track was EO Bond featuring Chris Lake. And notably, Skrillex invited a lot of guests onto this album, with every track featuring at least one person. But I found the best collaborator to be Chris Lake, who's featured on 2 songs in the latter half of the album. So yeah, EO Bond was personally my favourite out of the 2. I found it to be really satisfying and catchy. It's a sort of mix between tech house and bass house, and I suppose Chris Lake is responsible for the former and Skrillex for the latter. And I did sort of prefer the tech house element of it. It's very well executed, but granted, I suspect a lot of the praise here should be attributed to Chris Lake, just because I feel like he makes better music nowadays, my personal opinion. But yeah, the style sort of struck me as more Chris Lake overall. Good song. Another highlight for me was Pente Rala. This track almost sounds like it was produced by someone like Jamie XX or Over Mono or any other artist that lends themselves to the UK bass or deconstructed club scene. Really satisfying production and gritty, fruitful bass which complements the 2-step drums incredibly well. The album also opens with quite a strong track, I suppose, that being the titular track. It's a very sonically busy track and contains so many little quirks and effects. And it has like a satisfying sense of aggression which isn't really replicated to the same standard on the album. This track is also a prime example of what many fans dub as Skrill step, which I suppose based on this track is sort of a hybrid between bro step, traditional UK dubstep, and a more straightforward production technique with subtle drum sounds and a very minimal reverb use. There are also some more mellow moments on the album, with one example being the track Chini. A masterclass in vocal chops with a nice calming and emotional atmosphere. It really reminded me of Summit from the Bangarang EP. And had it featured an admittedly much desired drop in the latter half, this resemblance would have shone through even more intensively. But overall, I really did like this one. One of my overall criticisms of this album is that the songs don't really tie in too well together. It sort of just feels like a disjointed collection of tunes that Sonny has been working on for the past year or so. And this is common in a lot of modern EDM albums. However, I have to give Skrillex credit, again, for consistently releasing albums that feel like they at least had some thought put into them. It genuinely seems like he still has passion for making music, and this is something we've sadly lost for the majority of the EDM community, especially with these house producers who just can't create an original track to save their life. But I digress. Overall, this project wasn't terrible or anything. Out of the Skrillex albums and EPs I have listened to though, it does unfortunately rank at the bottom. But bear in mind that I've not yet listened to Don't Get Too Close, Jack U or Recess. But yeah, I think I'll give Soma a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, a bit of a shorter review this time. I'm a little bit out of my depth talking about Skrillex because I don't really listen to his new stuff that much. I mean, I listened to his album last year and I was a big fan. But then again, the standouts for me on that album were the Bro Step tracks that he, brought back from the dead, if you will. So yeah, I'm sure some other people have done some more comprehensive reviews on this one, but yeah, that's about it from me. Next review, probably gonna be the new Steve Lacy when that drops, because I'm a big fan of Steve Lacy. Something I should probably mention now is I'm not gonna stick to electronic reviews on here. I kind of did before on the couple of reviews I did years ago, but I'm passionate about loads of genres, like all the electronic aside. I like a lot of rock stuff, like shoegaze, post-rock, namely those two. I also like a lot of rap music. JPEG Mafia dropped a good record recently. I know a lot of people didn't receive that one well, but I actually really liked it. So yeah, and obviously R&B I'm a big fan of as well, which is why I'm a big fan of Steve Lacy. So the single's good as well. So yeah, hoping to review that one when that comes out. But if anything else comes out in between now and then of course I'll go for it. But yeah, that's about it.